Well, thanks for dropping by. Uh, I guess this is a coronavirus lockdown rambling. And if you don't like it, let me know. If you do like it, well, shucks, I hope you do. All right, so here we go. This ramble is going to be about one of my jobs that I had when I was in my career. And well, let's get into it. A little background. One of my early jobs was with a company called Decision Data Computer Corporation. And we made the computers in the back room, not the ones that you would see unless you were working in a back room. Big computers, fancy equipment, things like that. And I went to work for them, and I thought, shucks, this is a pretty good job. I think I'd like to make a career out of this and stay here for my whole work life, and that was my goal. About 10 or 12 years into that goal, the market went bad. People stopped buying our product, and I got laid off. Big deal. Being a believer and wanting to do what's right, I went to the Lord and I asked him, I said, what do you got for me? Show me what to do. How do I get another job? And he honored that request in a very strange way. And that's what this video is about. A little more background to this. I pretty much always had a part-time job or a second job. And at this particular time in my life, I was working for a fella. His name was Joe Jordan. He was a Jew. He was a very good friend, a really nice guy. We got along great. He ran a radio and TV repair shop in Warminster, Pennsylvania. And I would go in at night and work on his dogs, he called them, things that were hard to repair. Sometimes I'd go out and make house calls at night on the dogs. Sometimes I'd bring the dogs back to the shop and work on them there. But anyhow, him and I got along great. We spent a lot of time together in the shop and in his home as well, and just had a lot of fun with Joe Jordan. And when I got laid off, I asked him if there's any chance of me being able to pick up some more hours with you. And that didn't work out. But he was interested in me and trying to get me a new job, and he asked me for a copy of my resume, which I gave him. And he read it, and he says, Joe, I don't understand a thing on here. I said, that's okay. I'm looking for a very special job. And I want a job as an engineer in analog electronics. He says, whatever, okay. So next day, I got a call from a lady at a company that I'd never heard of before. And by the way, I hadn't sent out any resumes yet. And she said, we'd like to set you up with an interview. And so we made an appointment, and I was supposed to go in like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. And I got all dressed up and got my briefcase and put some resumes in it and got up there for the interview. They were in Warminster, just about 3 miles up the road from where we lived. And this lady was also the receptionist, and she said, Ben is waiting for you. Go on back. So Ben was the president of Air Shields Corporation. A little background about Air Shields. Air Shields has been around for a long time, and they made parts for aircraft and for World War II. And the one particular part that they were really specialist in and did the most of was something called an air shield. It was a piece of metal that would shield some components of an aircraft engine from the air blast that came from the propellers. So there's the name of the company, Air Shields. That was their product line, and had no idea how it would fit into a company like that. So I went back and I met Ben. Ben was a nice guy and pleasant. And I sat down and he's looking at me and says, this is what I want you to do. I says, I want you to go out and talk to my managers and find a job that you would like, and then come on back and talk to whatever her name was. And if the salary's not in your expectation, just tell her, and she'll fix it. I'm thinking, is this guy giving me a blank check? Pick whatever job I want in the company. and whatever salary I want. I went for it. So I signed up. Yes, I did. Went to work Monday morning and got to know a little bit more about the company and their product lines. And their main product line there in Warminster, Pennsylvania was infant care or prenatal or natal care. It was medical equipment. And one of the products that they had made for years and years and years was called a incubator isolator. You take a premature or newborn baby, you stick him in this thing, close the door, it gives him oxygen, keeps him warm, allows you to connect up all these tubes and hoses to him to support his life. And that was pretty impressive. That looked like a job that was right down my alley. That was basically saving infants' lives, and I like the idea of that. One of the other main products they had was a heart rate and respiration rate monitor, so you could make sure the kid's breathing okay and his heart working okay. And I like that. That was a great product for me. And another product that you have seen, as a matter of fact, in the older movies where there was an infant involved that maybe was had surgery or premature born or something was wrong, you would see in the movies, it's very popular to put a scene showing our incubator isolator in there. It's a little clear plastic box with holes in it where you can put your hands in and touch the baby. And alongside of the incubator isolator would be another gadget that I'm sure you've seen. It's a little gadget that every time the baby breathes, a little cylinder would go up and down. It's a bellows. The baby would breathe, the bellows would go up and down. And I can remember some of the more dramatic scenes where you see the bellows go up and stop. Buzzers would go off, nurses would run, and intervention would be made, and usually baby lives happy ever after. But that was the product we made. And the ventilator ventimeter was a very precision piece of equipment. It would detect when the kid was trying to make a breath, and it would assist him. It would ventilate him. And at the same time, it would also measure how much breath he took, how much pressure it took for that breath. And we're talking about very small numbers, baby's breath numbers. So this equipment was delicate, it was sensitive, it had to be durable, reliable, and that was the job I had, taking care of that piece of equipment. Well, one day we had a problem on that equipment, and the production had stopped, and everybody was in a tizzy trying to figure out how to fix this problem. The problem was deep inside this little piece of equipment, the ventilator ventimeter, was a little valve, and that little valve wasn't doing its job. And it was my job to try to figure out why. The vendor that was making that valve and selling it to us just wasn't doing a good job. And the valve was leaking. And it's only allowed to leak just a very tiny amount before it became a problem. So I took that on as a challenge, and I tried to figure out why that valve's leaking, and I did. I finally figured out a way that I could make that valve in such a way that it wouldn't leak, or wouldn't leak so much. And I presented that to the manufacturing team, and they looked at it and they said, we can't do that. That's too tedious of a job for manufacturing. That's why we sent it out for somebody else to do. And little diversion here. My father-in-law, his name was Harry, was having heart trouble. And at this time in his life, he was no longer able to do physical work. And he was bored, and had a nice rec room down below his house in the basement. So I thought, why not get him to try to do this procedure, this very tedious procedure? So I brought home a couple valves and some stuff to do the polishing of these valves with and something to test it with. And I showed him what we needed and how to do it, and he played with that for hours and hours and hours. And finally he said, yeah, I think I know how to do this. And we did a couple, and I took them back in the next day, and we tested them, and they were very good. And tried them in some production equipment, and they worked great. So I went to Ben. I told Ben what I was up to, and I said, I would like to set my father-in-law up to make these valves in his basement. He said, fine, do it. So my father-in-law set himself up as handcrafting by Harry. We made some business cards, not that we needed them, but it made him feel good. And we started bringing bad valves to him, and he would sit there and work on them. Well, Harry walked close to the Lord. He was a believer. Everything he did was bathed in prayer, including making these valves. Every single valve he made, he prayed about them, thinking that this valve may save the life of a premature or a newborn infant. And he had this test fixture where he put the valve on it, put a weight on it, put some air through it, and then measure how much air came out of it, leaking around the valve. And he wasn't satisfied with our specification. He wanted the valve to be perfect. And he did. That's what he did. He made these valves, prayed about each one, and they worked perfect. The production line got up, got to running fine, and problem solved. Harry's a hero, Joe's a hero. It was a good time. And about that time, Ben came to me again. He said, Joe, we got this vacuum pump product that we're having trouble with. We just can't get it to make specifications in production in our factory. And I said, well, I didn't know anything about vacuum pumps, but I'd be glad to look at it. So he said, well, we got one in the back room. So I went back and started looking at it, and it was not what I expected. Now, to me, a vacuum pump is a little gadget about this big with a handle on the top and a cup on it that gets the sputum or whatever you're vacuuming out. And you got them in dentist's office, you got them in doctor's office, and that's what I had in mind. That wasn't what he showed me. What he showed me was a much more powerful vacuum pump. Much more powerful. So I looked at it and I played around with it and checked out this, that, and the other, and sure enough, it would not come up to the specifications. Now, the specifications were for a high vacuum and a large throughput. Usually with a vacuum pump, you have very small throughput, but this one was a large volume throughput. And it just wasn't working. So I played around with it for several days and finally got some changes that I thought would make it work better. I presented that to Ben, and Ben liked it, and he says, well, I want you to go down to Moncks Corner, South Carolina, to our factory and see if you can't help them implement your thoughts into the production line so we can start to get this product moving again, because product was on hold. So I wound up in Moncks Corner, South Carolina one Monday morning to a factory where I had anticipated being a small factory. I mean, how many vacuum pumps can you make? And I got there, and it was not a small factory. It was a large factory, much larger than I thought would be necessary for these vacuum pumps. Well, they made some other stuff there as well. But anyhow, I went in and was introduced to a lady much older than I was, and she was the plant supervisor. She was glad to see me, and she took me back, showed me around, and showed me a room off to the side of the factory where the engineering work was done, and investigations and qualifications and all that good stuff. So I set my stuff up there and just went to work and started working on these vacuum cleaners, trying to implement vacuum pumps, trying to implement some of my thoughts. And a few days went by, and this was probably a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and this lady came in and she said, "Well, how you doing?" And I showed her what I did, and she says, "The reason I'm here, I've got another little problem I'd like you to look at while you're here. Maybe you could help us with that." I said, "Okay." And so, by the way, I having trouble understanding this vacuum pump. The specifications are like way far out from what I expected. I said, "Why does it have to have such a high vacuum, and why such a large volume throughput?" And she looked at me and she said, "Sonny, you just don't get it, do you?" I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." She said, "Well, come on, I'll show you the other problem we got." That left me really curious. And went out, and the other problem was they made disposable medical products. And this one product was a fancy name. It's called an amniocentesis kit. And the purpose of this product is to extract an amount of amniotic fluid from around the baby in the womb, so it could be analyzed, check for bacteria and strange stuff, and generally just check on the overall health of the baby, see if the baby's developing, if it's going to have Down syndrome or whatever. And she showed me the problem. The problem was then the sterilization process they had to use. After the factory's done making the product, they seal it, but it's not a impermeable seal. They seal the box. The box has got a large syringe in it, a very large syringe. It's got a long needle in it, a very long needle. It's got sterile fields in it, and it's got sterile pads in it, and everything the doctor would need to do an amniotic test. So she's explaining what's happening, and that during the sterilization process, the sterilization was incomplete in some areas of that kit, and pathogens were still alive after sterilization, which you can't have. The medical industry's got a lot of determination to keep products like that free of pathogens. And she said, "We don't know how it's happening, but we're not doing this complete sterilization." So I brainstormed it, and I was thinking, well, sterilization in this regard was the package was somewhat porous to gases, and they would put this disposable kit in a container and take all the air out, put a vacuum on it, and the air inside the kit would go out through the walls of the kit. And when all the air is out, they would introduce the sterilization gas. Gas would come in, kill all the pathogens, and the kit would be sterile at that point. Well, the problem was some areas of that kit weren't getting the sterilization gas sufficient, so that the pathogens were not being killed, and you just can't ship out product like that. So I asked her about the process, and one thing I was curious about was how big was the container that the kits were loaded into, and how long were they pulling a vacuum on the container and things like that. And she said, "Oh, well, the container's very big, and we put 100,000 of these kits in the container at one time to be sterilized." This is 100,000? She said, "Yeah, it's a very big container." And I got to thinking, this is an amniocentesis kit. It's used in troubled pregnancies. And there aren't that many. Some very small percentage of pregnancies have so much trouble that the doctor has to analyze the amniotic fluid. 100,000. And I said, "Why so many?" And she said it again. "Sonny, you just don't understand, do you?" "No, ma'am, I don't. Sorry." And she said, "Here, let me explain it to you. This kit can be turned around backwards. rather than taking out the amniotic fluid to be analyzed. This kit can be used to inject a saline solution, a powerful saline solution, into the womb to terminate pregnancy. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. This was not, oh no, this was not what I signed up for. Get me out of here. And she says, and the vacuum pump, the reason that vacuum pump, one of the unwritten specifications is that it has to be able to digest a 4-inch diameter grapefruit, is because that vacuum pump is a uterine aspirator, and what we do is we sell it into environments where that vacuum pump is required to completely empty the uterus or the womb. Take every part that's in there out, including the skull. I said, no ma'am, not me. And I walked out. Came back to Warminster, and that was a miserable weekend for me, that weekend. I felt like I had been raped. I felt like my dignity, my purpose in life had just been ripped from me and turned upside down. And it was a hard weekend. And I decided I didn't want to be part of that. So I wrote a memo to Ben and made a copy of it. I went in Monday morning. First thing I did was I put that memo up on the bulletin board in the employee area. And as I'm doing that, as I'm putting this memo up, some of my new friends, ones that I was working for, were curious. What's this? What's this? What are you saying? And they started to read it. And there was gasp. There was shock. There were people, what? And a crowd gathered. More and more people started reading this memo. Some of them, nah, I don't believe that. Some of them, maybe they had an inkling that something like that was going on. And the memo was an opportunity to give my Christian testimony, to be a witness to my fellow employees there, and to tell them that that operation, that business that we were in, was contrary to my beliefs, and I'm quitting. So it created quite a stir, and a lot of people quit with me. Some didn't. I went and talked to Ben. I said, Ben, I can't do this. I gave him the memo. It says, I'm out of here. And I walked out. Why in the world did God let me go through that? At the time, I had no idea. I know now. What he had in mind was that scene in front of the bulletin board. Where lives were touched, hearts were changed, careers were changed, and I don't know what else. Now, sadly, AirShields did not abandon that project. They did not abandon the abortion product line in Moncks Corner. And that part, I don't know how that's going to turn out. To me, it seemed like that part did not end well. But what did end well was shortly after I quit, I was recalled back to Decision Data. I got a better job with them, more money, and I just continued right on my career. But out of that, I came up with a Bible verse. I adopted it. It's my life verse now. and it told me that I should keep my eye on God and not look away. At Psalms 32:8, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. And I like that verse. And the reason I liked it was because what comes after that verse, Psalms 32:9. Don't be like the mule. It has to have a bit and bridle in its mouth to keep him from turning his head into you, I guess to bite you. In other words, don't be stubborn. Keep your eye on God. He'll show you what His desire is for your life. And He has a plan. Everything He does is perfect. And at that time, He had a plan. He had a plan, and He put me inside that plan and allowed me to be part of it. There was a lot of uproar about the abortion industry about that time. And it was a pleasure to be used by God in a very small way to bring awareness of what was going on within Air Shields and maybe make a difference in people's lives. So there. That's Joe's ramblings for coronavirus lockdown. And, well, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. If you do like it and want to encourage me to take this to another level or give you more videos or whatever, you can try. I don't know if it's going to be much encouragement or not, but I like doing this. And God bless you, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.